K-Man's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio K-Man's Talk Today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, there are many things that we know for certain. According to our calendar, today is Friday. We had a discussion, there was a meeting, it went to committee, everybody agreed. Today is Friday, so we're not going to change that. And it is a fantastic Friday. We invite you to be a part of our discussion. Honored to have an excellent gentleman in the studio to share and shine with us. So as we come back, please join me as we extend a warm Friday. Fantastic welcome to our excellent counsel and confidant, Mr. Leonard Dilbert. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Fidelity Bank. For all your banking needs, visit fidelitygroup.com. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Also brought to you by greenturtle.ky. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app. The future of mobile. Saving lives today.
Radio K-Man's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email Talk Today at candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. And I say publicly, as I would say proud, I'm very honored that you would accept the invitation to join me in the studio. I'm always grateful when people are willing to share your perspective, to be able to not only borrow from their experience and expertise, but to sometimes get an insight from, the way they may say, well, did you notice this? Did you experience this? Did you see how this works? And especially in this time where, for some reason, when I say this with the greatest of respect, sometimes it's not even said inadvertently. There is that deliberate maliciousness that some of us would ascribe to certain words, right? Mm-hmm. But we started out in the last few months becoming very much indoctrinated, deliberate word on my part, conditioned, another deliberate word on my part, by words like social distancing. And you go places and people are in Cayman as in other parts of the world, being acclimated. Another deliberate word. Mm-hmm. Hey, you got to do this because 6 feet save lives and all kind of stuff. And so why I share that is that there isn't this fellowship, this interaction, this exchange of ideas, and that's a great loss to our society. So in your presence and company today, maybe I'll leave as a Friday and go, wow, this was another productive, positive week, because we have something to build on. So thank you for your time.
We can hope. We can hope.
One can hope. Yes.
One can hope. Thank you for having me here again. As you say, it is Friday, and Friday is a day that tends to have been welcomed by people, particularly since the advent of the kind of regimen that we live under. Mm-hmm. And have lived under for some time, and that is the regimen of the work week and the weekend off and so on. Mm-hmm. And that is another story on its own. It is really worth a discussion.
Yes.
How it is that you're talking about becoming acclimatized and conditioned and so on. All of that can be applied backwards if you look at the beginning of the systems that we live under. In a similar way, the way education is managed, the way schools are structured and so on. Mm-hmm. We have inherited these systems and they serve certain purposes. We are so accustomed to them now that we take them as if they are permanent, as if they're unchangeable.
Yep.
And part of the shock of the pandemic situation has been how people have tried to navigate themselves around the absence of a classroom to send your child to, for argument's sake. The absence of a workspace to attend and to do your work, and how you adjust to that. And the technology that has developed in the last 15, 20 years, I guess, that has become a real mass available on a mass scale, has facilitated the adjustment, if you will. But as you know, people still regard that as being the norm, and the whole question is, well, when do we do it normally again? And there's nothing normal about what we're talking about. They are social systems that came into being as a result of various developments in the societies around us, and we have been essentially given those systems by the persons who developed them, because it's just part of the feature of living in a subordinate culture and having your life regulated in many ways by a dominant culture, which is something that is not a typical part of our frame of reference. We don't tend to think in those terms, but it is a fact of life. Part of what I try to do as a writer is to not assume that what we have around us is normal or real necessarily in a sort of grounded sense. That for the most part we live in the midst of all sorts of social constructs. And that sort of brings me to what how I wanted to introduce myself today, and that is so what's keeping me up at night? Why do I want to be here? Why do I accept an invitation to be on the radio in the first place? What am I going to talk about? And that's the background, sort of tip of the iceberg, what I was just referring to, because I will get into some aspects of what the iceberg looks like in itself. But in terms of what keeps me up at night, I wanted to use the phrase that I had not danced a jig in public on any devil's ribcage for a long time. So when did I do some of that?
I like that.
And some people will object to that characterization if they choose to apply it to some of the things I'm going to try to bring up and elaborate on. But that's okay. Because if I can't be provocative, then I'm not doing my job.
All right. So if I could, because you said that, I'm thinking Charlie Daniels, all right? So for those of us who like country music, you know, his song, The Devil Went Down to Georgia, was looking for a soul. It's sort of the same reference to as an extent, right?
I'm not going to go there.
Okay.
Not going to go there. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Charlie Daniels died recently.
This is the first time?
Anyway, that somebody can fact check me.
She said he did, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Susan knows everything.
Thank you, Ms. Susan. In fact, that brings me to one of the things I wanted to say before I got into the meat of the matter, so to speak, and that is to say thanks to you and to Radio Cayman more broadly for my repeated appearances here. To you for being a gracious host always, and the staff who make it happen, like Ms. Susan, who is a poetry lover herself, I believe, and
that's smart.
And so I feel particularly welcome,
yes, sir.
In that sense. And I want to also say a bigger thanks to our government for their management of the pandemic, to the frontline persons that has become the accepted phrase, of whom there are many, and there have been recent reminders that when we think about frontline persons, that we shouldn't just be thinking about medical personnel, that there are lots of people that support the systems that enable them to do what they have to do, including people who clean the floors and do all of the sanitizing of their equipment and so on, involved in the haulage of PPE and all sorts of things that come into play, because after all, it is a system. It is a huge and very complex system, the system for delivery of healthcare, as we tend to refer to it. And of course, I have problems with the system itself. And those problems speak to the nature of the system. The fact that the system is heavily science-based, but science that is conceived of in a relatively narrow fashion, that ignores a lot of curative approaches that ought to be given serious consideration, if not actual application. But again, that's a whole nother ball of wax as well. But really, the first question I wanted to get into was to do with the whole pandemic situation. Your introduction that referred to people's adjustment of their behavior and so on is a useful starting off point in some ways. But again, I won't get drawn down that line exactly right now. What I wanted to start off with actually was to ask about the WHO. I have a problem to do with the WHO now, and not one that would lead me to suggest that we don't put our funding into it like some people are choosing to do. In fact, quite opposite. What I want to know is, why is the WHO so alone at this point in time? Because that's how it seems to me. Every time I see the Director General get on the TV screen, I say to myself, this is a lonely man. And I say that because I don't hear coming from the United Nations itself, I don't hear coming from member states, the kind of support that ought to exist in a pandemic situation for the WHO. And it's an opportunity missed, as far as I'm concerned. Huge opportunity being missed because, of course, the pandemic not only continues, but continues to grow in scope. But the states and the UN institutions seem to me to be missing a great opportunity. And I call it an opportunity because let's take the UN institutions themselves. The whole reason for being, raison d'etre, as the French would say, of the United Nations institutions would be to support and facilitate the systems that various countries operate around the world. That is the well-being and integrity of peoples around the world. That's their whole reason for being, right? The United Nations, as you know, grew out of the post-war situation, and the driver was, well, let us see if we can get together and do something for all of humanity, right, by joining forces globally. And for that to be the case, but yet for the institutions to not be pushing behind WHO and pulling every resource possible, because what the pandemic does in every place that it takes hold, and it is widening all the time, is devastate the capacity of the countries that it takes hold in to continue with normal life, to continue to maintain their whatever efforts they're making towards the well-being of their own people. And so to my mind, people refer to the dealing with the pandemic as being a war situation. We're at war with the pandemic. Well, then why is it that the resources that would go into a war are not going into fighting the pandemic? Why is it that people are still pushing much larger sums of money into making and selling armaments and maintaining conflicts around the world and so on? Why is that? It seems to me to be a really absurd situation that challenges my sense of being a human being.
With that, could we just slightly pause, take a short break, and when we come back, delve into that notion as one of our, listeners and avid readers and fans of your poetry, just quickly posited this sentiment. I think if I recognize the quotation, who will drink the milk of the sea pig? With that, let's pause and take a short break. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
I've got some beautiful clothes, I know just where they go, good and cleaner.
A reminder of the standard 10% off prepay on wedding dresses and gowns, also household items, drapes, bedspreads, area rugs, and more. 10% prepaid discount can also apply to all wearing apparel, $17 and up. These discounts at all our stores. Savannah Countryside, 946-1884. Elgin Avenue, 949-2452. 337 Eastern Avenue, drive-through rain or shine, 949-7104. Call our seamstress, Miss Kathy, at 949-2452 Elgin Avenue for all your adjustments and repairs. Puritan Cleaners. You feel good when you look good.
Hey, hun, what you doing?
Putting things away in the shed since it's hurricane season. You know, preparing for the better.
Don't you mean preparing for the worst?
No, for the better. Since we have Brit-K Insurance, we're fully covered against hurricanes. Plus, they have response teams ready to help us file a claim faster. If I were preparing for the worst, I'd watch football all day.
Still don't get it.
Isn't there a match on?
Oh, really?
Let Brit-K prepare you for the better this hurricane season. Call 949-8699 or visit britk.ky.
4 SUVs, 3 saving options, and lots of reasons you should head to the summer SUV sale now at Vamp Motors. Looking for a Ford SUV with great safety ratings? Save up to $8,000 on a new Edge and $2,000 on a new Escape. Need to accommodate an active family lifestyle? Save up to $5,000 on a 7-seater Toyota Rush. Want a fuel-efficient SUV with sporty style? Save up to $2,000 on the Toyota CHR Hybrid. Get cash back, take the full discount, or upgrade your new SUV during our summer SUV sale, where you can save up to $8,000. The summer SUV sale, Vamp Motors, Walkers Road.
I'm Acting Superintendent Brady Banks of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service. Speeding, drunk driving, and distracted driving are all extremely dangerous behaviors that can cause accidents and loss of lives that affect not only those involved, but their families and friends alike. We wish to remind all motorists, practice safe driving habits every time you get behind the wheel. Drive within the speed limit and don't drive if you've been drinking. Give 100% of your attention to the road when driving. Equally important to note, we are now entering into our rainy season. Historically, we tend to see increased road collisions due to weather conditions, often resulting in poor visibility and wet road conditions. Remember, extra attention is required if you're driving, as well as increased vigilance of other road users. Drive safely, Cayman Island.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you very, very much for joining us. We have the excellent company of Mr. Leonard Dilbert. And again, publicly, thanks for coming and sharing. For those of us who know you who've watched and followed your career, to recognize that, thankfully, you're one of our own that will sit and actively record. Use the artistic ability to express in a way that not only for posterity, but we can make contemporary sort of observations, and that is going to bode well for our legacy. But when we think of just within the Caribbean region, there are not many names that immediately come to the surface that we can look at and say, that people have this particular thing that they can draw on. But yet we can go back centuries in other jurisdictions, other cultures, and say, here are the readings, the writings, the sculptures, the carvings of these things, right?
Yes.
But anyway,
you're walking right into my into my area now. Well, no, because one of the things I wanted to really speak to, going further from the aspect of the position that WHO is in and the whole institutional reality that faces the response to the pandemic, is that we are in a big moment in history, right? And among other things, what the pandemic does is serve as a reminder that history is not a mere record of the past, that we live in history, we live with history. And specifically, we live within what I would call a 500-year-old regime. And it's a regime that is now being made more transparent in many ways because of the pandemic. Many people are making the observation that it's interesting how much is being shown about the nature of societies and the structures within societies, how much poverty exists in places that you didn't expect it to be, how disadvantage has been working against some segments of the population and so on, that didn't have a light shown on it up to now, or at least not to the extent that it has become a household word, so to speak. And I think that is a useful outcome, potentially, from the pandemic. But the question is, how useful can it be? And I don't think it can become very useful. That is to say, useful in the sense of serving the purpose of justice being done towards humanity in the broader frame. Because I think we have to, first of all, establish what that historical picture is. And the way I describe it is that the empire persists. And this is not the Star Wars empire. Right? This is the global empire that exists on planet Earth and has existed for, like I say, about 500 years, and change in its appearance. The structures have changed to some extent, names have changed to some extent, but the essential quality of the thing remains the same. That is to say that there are countries who are represent the dominant cultures in the world, and other countries that represent the subordinate cultures in the world. And the extractive nature of the one against the other remains the fact of life. It used to be the case that what was extracted was raw materials, which were then processed and sold back and so on. And some of that is still the case. I think we spoke a couple of days ago, noticing the packaging on a jar of honey that indicated that it had 4 or 5 sources, including Cuba, Uruguay, Argentina, something else. But this was a jar of honey that had been processed and packed in Switzerland and now is appearing on the table in Cayman. Now, it must be something, it must strike you as bizarre that is the case. But I think that's a very small example of a very big picture. And the big picture is actually the picture that determines the nature of our existence.
If I then may ask, right, and certainly, please, I beg of you almost, help me to make sure that we limited by the constraints of the time allotted for this discussion. And this is why I keep asking our people, when we are at dinner tables, try to increasingly invite more of our neighbours and friends and family to sit and gather. Turn off the one-eye monster. I mean, throw down every device and just talk about anything and everything, so that your children become engaged in this thing that we're losing. But even we ourselves, right? If not appropriate now, maybe a mental note for future discussions. The notion that, as you were speaking, I wrote two words: exploitation and the revisionists. So we go back to the raw materials, and we even could probably throw in another word, this idea that there now needs to be this attempt to make some sort of, reparations, financial and otherwise, for things, we even would use words like atrocities, that were committed by some people against others, right? So we came to this new world, and we took people, and we took resources, and we took it back to other places. But just in today, are we at risk of us, because of our perception of who we are, positions that we employ, the politician, the business person? We want to make sure that history is kind to us because we're going to write it ourselves. We think Churchill was a great guy, but was he a misogynistic drunk? I mean, the question was never asked, right?
Well, the question is being asked now. He's been targeted. Let's put it that way. Or his statue has been targeted among those that maybe ought to come down. Because why should we glorify someone who has a track record that he has? And Churchill is remembered primarily for his leadership in the war, which is tremendous. And let's not take that away. But what most people do not know about Churchill is his position with respect to the people of India and the extent to which that contributed to deaths and continued oppression of people in India.
Yeah.
And that's not a proud part of his record at all. But if we're going to tell the truth about things, we got to tell the truth about things, right?
So help me God, the whole truth, number the truth and something. Yeah.
Yes.
But you see, and I'm going to ask, like I said, I'll be led by you, but I only said that because someone else that I haven't seen and engaged with for a long time, and probably but for this pandemic would never have, all right? Had reminded me that way back when, probably early teens, I had wrote something, said something, that critiqued all these things, but for him, there was nobody else willing to say, well, do you realize that this is true? You don't like it, but Churchill is this great, honorable guy, and how can you critique if you don't look at the good, the bad, and the ugly? Yeah, I like that Vantif film, right?
Yeah, and but let me say this: I am painfully aware that in these kinds of discussions, there's a way that you can be effective and a way that you can shoot yourself in the foot, and I'm sure there are persons who may be listening now who will be thinking in quite aggravated terms about, well, how dare you? How dare you insult? How dare you besmirch the name of, etc., etc.
Oh, sorry, I just got disinvited to something. Sorry.
But the point is that unless all the movement that is happening now, the Black Lives Movement, the overhaul or the push for overhaul of climate policy, etc., as urgent as those things are, it doesn't take long to appreciate the extent to which there are limits on the discussion that are taking place in one sphere or the other, and that without adopting a more informed historical perspective, the efforts are not going to succeed, not going to have the impact that is hoped for. And in fact, there would be more polarization, more violence against people, more oppression of people. Those things will go on and go on, in many cases, untouched by any of these protests, unless you have a sense of, well, where are we anyway? Where does all this come from? How do you understand how this got to be the way it is? Because there's no doubt, really, that as effective, as efficient as the capitalist system is, it has a lot to answer for in relation to all of these things, in relation to the condition of the global climate now. Right? The level of productivity that has been driven in the last umpteen years has a consequence. You keep doing these things and more of these things, and it's going to have a result. Not always good.
Miss Susan, are you sharing that we have a caller, right? Mr. Dubert, let's join the callers. I mean, if they bring in chocolate, that's even better, but we'll take what we get. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Mr. Sterling Green.
Good afternoon,
sir. Good afternoon to Mr. Leonard. It's always very, very good to hear him.
Good afternoon, sir.
On there, offering different perspectives on different topics. The issue of Mr. Churchill, which I've always had very, very great reverence and admiration for him. I won't say reverence, reverence reserved to the Lord. But one has to realize that he was more or less a realist and understanding that even the people need to be lied to save their lives. And that's a very important thing, because I think he once did say that the truth is so precious that one must be prepared to lie to protect it. And what he meant was to carry on with a way of life that see if you enjoy. You will have to lie to you a little bit to push your courage, because that was another thing that he said that's so important. Courage is the first of all human qualities, that it guarantees all the others. And the reasons why he did what he did, because at the same time nowadays everything is come up into the open. So the corruptions that were happening years ago, it's the same as now. There's nothing new with that, but they were covered up. Nowadays it's much more easy to get your information at the touch of a button. It's evident, and so we can always say what an awful person he was. But if you look into all the heroes, all the persons, even those here, you'll find that there are things that are best left, like they say, sleeping dogs lie. And the pulling down of statues, we know, I don't care who wants to refute what I'm saying. It's political. The major force behind what's happening in the United States with all this Black Lives Matter business, it's a political movement. And we can't blame politicians for trying to push forward a candidate that they want. Many of them are being paid to do these demonstrations. And people don't want to admit that, but that's the way it is. That's reality. To tear down statues revered by many members of society might actually have the opposite effect of what you're trying to achieve. And we see that all over the world. Black lives didn't matter to all over the world when hundreds of black people are killed by black people every week in the African nations. I mean, notice that all this happened. In the United States, 95% and more of all black deaths are black on black crimes, but they didn't want to say that then. I lived there, and I know what I'm saying, but it matters now because this is a very good time politically to make this type of statement. It's unfortunate that those who are truthfully really thinking about it are overshadowed by this glory movement and so forth. We have to be very careful, very, very careful when we talk about the one world and one this. They're all separate nations, and in my estimation, in my opinion, you'll never see that. You'll never see a one world here on earth. It'll happen in heaven, those of us who are fortunate enough to get there. But it won't happen. We're separate people. And just like you see with the production of the thing, it is to give a chance to other little nations to produce. But also it's all about saving money, because those nations, $1 is worth $50 to them, 10 cents an hour people and so forth. So it goes right around and around and around.
All right. Well, thank you for that, and I apologize to you and both Mr. Dilbert, but we have to take this break. Well, I tell people, there are things that you like, but there's one thing you don't want to be, and that's on the south side of Susan. So let's pause and take our break. When we come back, more talk today.
Green Turtle, modern solutions to get you through the new normal. Download the Green Turtle app now and top up yours or a loved one's phone with any mobile carrier in any destination. Home delivery of laptops, tablets, phones, accessories, and iTunes and major online retailer gift cards. And now, home deliveries of groceries and courier service. Guaranteed delivery within 2 hours from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Visit their list of products at greenturtle.ky or download the Green Turtle app today. Green Turtle is not only the future of mobile, but today it can help save a life. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app. The future of mobile, saving lives today. King Sports Center Art of Fun Summer Camp is back. From July 7th to August 7th. Now, in its 16th year, the Art of Fun Camp is ideal for kids aged 5 through 10 with activities from football, basketball, dodgeball, squash, rock climbing, arts and craft dance, singing, and more. Your child can stay cool while having fun in a safe and secure environment. For more info, email kings.brebanks@gmail.com. That's kings.brebanks@gmail.com or call 946-KING. Like King Sports Center on Facebook and And you can also find them on Instagram or call 946-5464. King Sports Center, providing you with all your fitness, recreation, and relaxation needs.
While the primary source of alcohol for underage drinkers is people they know, research shows that 7 to 9% of those who report alcohol use in the Cayman Islands purchase alcohol directly from retailers. Tips Off Premise helps retailers focus on verifying the legal drinking age when selling alcohol. Since the program was introduced here in the Cayman Islands back in 2005, we have trained over 400 persons and partnered with over 10 retailers. Contact us on 949-9000 to have your staff trained today. This message is brought to you by Radio Cayman and the National Drug Council.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
And good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you so much again to the gentleman who just called. Thanks again for sharing your perspective. Please don't feel in a way slighted if we had to interject those commercial breaks. That's where we get our bonuses, not just kidding. Susan, boy, you really trying hard to get fired. I have the excellent company of Mr. Leonard Dilbert, and I say this publicly and sincerely. Thanks very much for coming in and sharing, because sometimes we don't appreciate that, one, people who share things publicly actually allow us to think, to question what we believe, but to become cemented in, hey, this is what I believe. But it encourages us, right? And two, the notion that in a society, for it to be healthy, if it to be championed as a democracy, need to have open, transparent dialogue. Because if not, I was going to make a joke about the government, but I'm not going to go there. So
well, yeah, I would add my own thanks to the caller. And just to say, by way of context or contextualization, that to be clear that I'm not presenting myself as a representative of the Black Lives Movement right now. Although in some ways I could easily adopt that frame, nor am I advocating the tearing down of statues, etc. It's a complex thing. I think there are some aspects of it that appeal to me, and other aspects that don't. But that's not my brief. It was merely a part of the discourse, but I will speak specifically about Mr. Churchill, because the caller referred to reverence and then pulled himself back quite rightly about attitude towards Mr. Churchill. The fact is that the record shows that there are aspects of Churchill's record that are not something for any human being to be proud of. And that has to do with dealings with the beginnings of the Indian independence movement and the responses that were sanctioned by him that led to lives being lost and so on. That is not something to be proud of. I don't care whether it's Churchill, I don't care who it is. Right? So the real urgency of these things is not whether we pull down statues, etc. or not. It is to do what I was speaking of a little while ago, to do with looking at history to see what the history actually contains, what the record shows, and being prepared as human beings to use our best judgment about how we respond to those things and what we want to carry forward, what we want to say we're proud of and what we're not. And I will leave that to each person to do for themselves. But I know what I have done thus far tells me that there is a mixed record as far as Churchill is concerned. His record has to stand on its own merits or demerits. I am more interested actually in the reality of these protest movements and so on, in terms of the extent to which they understand what they're dealing with as far as the forces aligned against them, the kinds of things that they're challenging, whether they can possibly succeed in challenging these things, or whether they do not adequately understand what they're up against. And part of that is that it seems to me that they don't understand the wider historical context. I've listened to a lot of representation, and I don't get that. I get a very limited worldview being shown, and nor do they seem to understand the extent to which the social and mass media facilities are dominated by the same forces that they're trying to buck against. But in order to change those things, and this bears on the pandemic itself, in order to change responses to these things that are coming from public institutions, we have to understand what we're dealing with. And in the case of the pandemic, one of the concerns I have about what comes next is whether or not the so-called health systems are going to be changed. Because part of the difficulty of responding that we see around us now is the fact that the health systems have become more and more modeled on a frame that is based on curative approaches, and public health systems have been essential starved for resources. Now the pandemic requires governments to push into public health responses that they are scrambling to make it up and to find a way of coping, because it is not part of the orientation to the extent that it should have been. And that brings to my mind the idea that the wellness of the population has not been the emphasis. And the opportunity that arises out of the pandemic is the possibility of pushing the systems more towards wellness. And to do that, it seems to me that we have to go back to the old WHO frame of health being defined as wellness in a broad frame, including emotional and psychological wellness.
Okay.
And so that leads me to use the phrase that it's not the level of the cell we're looking at and all the substructures of the cell, but the level of the soul. Right? That if we look at those two that discrepancy and understand that if we move more towards the health at the level of the soul, we have more of a chance of dealing with wellness from a human perspective.
Okay. Mr. Dilbert, I apologize. We
Yes.
got the news. That's interject.
Okay.
We use the word holistic, but I like the word soul even better. All right, going to pause and take a break. You want to realize how much you know and how much you don't know, how much you need to know? Well, come us back after the break and we'll show you. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio K-Man.
It's only two species that we have here on the island.
Your voice, your choice.
It is in the best interest of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio K-Man's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. There are currently no known active cases of COVID-19 in the Cayman Islands after another 208 COVID-19 test results are reported Wednesday. We should soon start seeing the results of some of the returning residents who have been in the government quarantine facilities for the mandatory period. In international news, UN agencies have warned of a humanitarian crisis in Lebanon after Tuesday's devastating blast in Beirut. Lebanon was already suffering a major economic downturn before the explosion, which left at least 154 people dead, 5,000 injured, and 300,000 homeless. The World Food Programme said the damage to Beirut's port would interrupt food supplies and push prices up. The World Health Organization said the health system was seriously damaged, with 3 hospitals out of action. An Air India Express plane with 191 people on board has crashed at an airport in the southern state of Kerala, officials say. The aircraft en route from Dubai skidded off the runway and broke in two at Calicut Airport upon landing. Rescue operations are underway with emergency services at the scene. At least 2 people, including the pilot, have died. The Matrix films are about being transgender, the trilogy's co-director says. That was the original intention, but the world wasn't quite ready, says Lily Wachowski, who came out as trans along with her sister Lana after the films came out. Lily confirmed the theory to Netflix. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Your voice, your choice, your radio.
Green Turtle, modern solutions to get you through the new normal. Download the Green Turtle app now and top up yours or a loved one's phone with any mobile carrier in any destination. Home delivery of laptops, tablets, phones, accessories, and iTunes and major online retailer gift cards. And now, home deliveries of groceries and courier service. Guaranteed delivery within 2 hours from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Visit their list of products at greenturtle.ky or download the Green Turtle app today. Green Turtle is not only the future of mobile, but today it can help save a life. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app, the future of mobile, saving lives today.
Fidelity Bank would like to thank all essential workers. We salute your efforts and thank you for the sacrifices you've made to keep us all safe. During these challenging times we're facing, our top priority is the health and safety of the communities we serve. And while it's true that things are changing rapidly every day, one thing that will never change is our commitment to giving you the best and sound financial solutions to help you during and after the coronavirus pandemic. At Fidelity Bank, our focus will always be you. Fidelity, we're good for you.
The Tuesday and Thursday edition of The Business Buzz is brought to you by Cayman Medical Supplies, providing quality pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and consumer products to healthcare providers, retailers, and ultimately the patients at a reasonable rate in a friendly, caring, and timely manner. Cayman Medical Supplies is located at number 93 Smith Road, Windward Center. Telephone 949-6211.
Register now for the 3rd Annual Chamber of Commerce Economic Forum, taking place online on Friday, August 14th. This year's theme, Rebuilding a Better Cayman, will tackle the effects the COVID-19 pandemic has had on the local and regional economy and how the private and public sectors can work together to create a more durable and more sustainable future. Don't miss out. Visit caymanchamber.ky to register for a full day or half day today. Corporate ticket bundles available. In partnership with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development. The forum is made possible thanks to sponsors CUC, DART, Kensington Management Group, Cayman Enterprise City, and Hurley's Media.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. And what a job Miss Susan has. Yeah, she's got to manage the radio, make us sound good, and give it the added task of make me look handsome on TV. Wow, I tell you. She's a miracle worker. We're still in her deliver.
She got 2 jobs to do today.
Yeah, but hopefully I give her a good Christmas bonus early. Thank you, my friend, for joining us, for not just indulging the invitation, but engaging us in this conversation, and hopefully promoting a sense of public discourse that as we look at what is unfolding, globally, not just regionally, not just locally, but to see that there, there's much that needs to be done as a people in order to bring about a sense of unity and community and strengthen who we are. But that resolve needs to be a willingness to each of us, in my view, do the very best that we can do, and not leave it for somebody else to, hold all the strain on the rope, because their back may give out, just never know. So anyway,
yes,
that'll be my,
well, yeah. Just before we took the break, I was nudging towards the idea of adopting, or the possible benefit of adopting a different approach to wellness, and the idea of wellness and incorporating the condition of the soul. And that's not by means of recommending that we adopt what's the word again for when the church rules the society?
Theocracy, no.
Yeah, theocracy.
Theocracy?
Right, yes.
I said daddyocracy, but that's when I rule the house. It hasn't happened yet.
It's not going to happen. No. It's not going to happen. Oh. Give it up now. But no, that the good book, the Christian Bible, cautions us that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of God. And that is, I suppose, is representative of the way that I have been preoccupied during the lockdown, and I found support, I suppose you could say, to that from the well-known classical music conductor Daniel Barenboim. Daniel Barenboim is known for a number of things, not just very good at being a conductor, but he was the initiator, I believe, of an orchestra that drew from both the Israeli people, the Jewish people in Israel, and the Arabic people around them, and had these young musicians within the same orchestra coming from these different sources as a way of speaking to how peace can be made between people, that if they can make music together, then what else is possible? And he said on 21st of June, during the lockdown, music is not a profession. Music is a spiritual activity. As a spiritual activity, it provides or presents a means of asking questions. I hope we will be able to soon be asking these spiritual questions again. So that was his take on wishing to be back in the business of performing for people and so on, because he saw those performances as representing that kind of activity. It's not just a pleasant experience. It's an experience that's meant to make you dig a little deeper into yourself and ask some questions of yourself. And I would say this is a question, an attitude, a disposition that all of us need to adopt individually in our families, in our communities. And it's the kind of thing that it seems to me, again, the pandemic presents an opportunity to do that sort of thing. During lockdown, well, dig in.
Become reflective, pensive.
Become a little bit more reflective. Ask yourself some questions about things, not just... don't just become preoccupied with, well, how soon can I do again what I used to do before? But ask yourself the question, was what I was doing before the thing that I should have been doing in the first place?
Can I do it better?
Is that, can I do it better, or should I do it differently? Or do a different thing altogether? What is it that is really going to lend itself towards my well-being or the well-being of the community I live in? And I've been trying to take my own advice in that sense. And in dealings with our planetary home, for argument's sake, I would ask the question, is it possible already too late for us to take a breath without breathing poison? And I don't think it is possible. And we say that we have such a great air quality here, for argument's sake. Right? We feel the air is clean, and I'm not sure that is entirely as safe as we think it is. The Sahara dust cloud is not even the best example, but it's an ambassador for the poisons, if you will. It basically reminds us that all sorts of things are drifting around in the atmosphere, and the atmosphere itself has become affected by human activity. The quality of the air globally, it doesn't stay still. Nobody knows where the wind comes from, right? But it's constantly moving around. And we need to really discipline ourselves. There is the whole question of where we are, how we got here, and then the question of, well, where are we going to go from here? And one of the little questions I ask myself, because after all, I am responding to things according to the gifts given to me, and those gifts have to do with some sort of artistic practice, and particularly to do with language use. And I asked myself the question, because I'm having to spend a lot of time on the Iron Shore, the Iron Shore is directly across from where I'm living, and because I couldn't drive to the beach to do my usual walk, I walked on the Iron Shore. And it took me back to a childhood practice. As a child, I did that over and often, barefoot too. Incredible enough, now I don't dare go on the Iron Shore without some sturdy shoes. Right?
You can't go outside with it.
Exactly. But after the question is, could you form an image that would say the spirit of a people could be in its geology? Because I found myself noticing things about the Iron Shore, about the nature of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to elaboration of a longer piece, which I wished to have had ready today, but could not get into that condition. But I would want to, on a future occasion, possibly be able to speak that into the microphone and into the airwaves.
What could be offered up public invitation now?
Thank you.
Yes,
I had hoped I would lead you in that direction.
No, I didn't want to inject at first, but as you said, no, when you're ready, man.
Yeah, but because no, I mean, for whatever benefit it might present. But for the time being, I have this little piece that I wanted to share, which I think bears on the previous discussion about the history, and I want it to be seen that way, because that's how I heard it when it was given to me. And just tentatively calling it Flint Rock, and it's a very short, like one stanza. If truly our soul is in the stone, and you knew our limestone is growing into Flint Rock, you might not be so worried. Come here our motto to be. Strike me with your steel, and I will answer you in fire. And obviously, the formation of that whole image has to do with how you make fire in the first place, using Flint Rock and steel, but it also has to do with the fact that the producers of steel are the metropolitan entities that have that kind of industrial capacity, and the answer in fire is pretty obvious, right? Because the fire can be speech, can be fire to speech, it can be all sorts of things, but it's meant to have a sort of warning note to it, because people need to wake up to the reality that we cannot continue to, or should not expect to continue to operate the global community the way it has been.
Could we use that piece to look at a scenario where, whether the Cayman context or any place, you have development, you have this existing people, this existing physical landscape, you're superimposing this other thing, and then there's this pushback. So carrying capacity, the words that we would use, they push potential for the society to be impacted in a way that we're not ready for. We don't have the infrastructure for that. We don't want that. And whether that's the port development with more crews, whether that's a new high-rise building, whatever that thing is. I mean, as you were reading that, I'm seeing all these imagery in relation to a people and then a development. Anyway.
Well, if you saw anything like that, then you would say the piece of writing succeeds, because it's the kind of thing.
I thought I was just reading about it.
No, it's the kind of thing that was operative in my own mind, and I don't expect that everybody hearing that will hear the same thing, because it's not in the nature of how human beings communicate, how we use language. People will interpret and apply in different ways, but I am deliberately using that as a sort of kick-off point to segue into a bit more of that side of what preoccupied me during the lockdown. For myself, for instance, watching the birds a lot, because if you sort of force to sit in one place, and we are in peril to some extent of erasing from our memories the things that are most disagreeable. Right? It's a common human facility. The things that are painful, we won't forget them. Things that are disagreeable and other way, well, let's try to erase that from our memory. And there's a big danger, I think, that the pandemic will have a profound impact on the collective memory. Now, I think it bears looking at what does the collective memory, how is it made up in the first place? How do you arrive at a collective memory? How do people develop shared memories? And how do they come to gain value in communities as a reference point and a take-off point for things and so on? And I say there's a danger in the terms of the pandemic, because I'm sure that part of the collective memory has to do with collective experience. And the more collective experience is severed, or interrupted, disrupted, changed dramatically, the wearing of masks, the social distancing and so on, the more those things are a normal part of life, a normalized part of life, the less collective experience there can be. Right? The size of groupings and so on, the kinds of things that people are accustomed to doing in groups. The more those kinds of things are disrupted or displaced, the more the collective memory is in danger. And we dare not be unmindful of that. And I'm not advocating for not wearing masks. I'm not advocating for not social distancing. No. I think that those sensible measures, as the medical people have said again and again, those are the best means of safeguarding ourselves that we know of now, right? And by all means, let us use them, but let us not underestimate the impact that these things have on the way that we live our lives. And in not underestimating, let us then reflect on what the nature of that impact is, and how to respond to it.
Right. Without, and again, I only because I recognize the structure of this discussion, in a sense, the time constraints imposed upon us, right? So with that construct in mind, I'm mindful to say then that as a people, a conscious people who think, who I believe are required to ask questions, that we now need to, more than ever, say, okay, we're doing that. Why? Is there a better way? And when there are apparent contradictions, we reference the WHO or medical personnel or politicians, philanthropists, whomever, that seem to have, one, a public voice, and two, the means by which to influence, that we need to be more, inclined to ask questions so that we preserve the democracy, but we make sure that the practices are best for as many. With that being sort of my ethos, I wonder to what extent, when that happens, so let's say, not to pick on them, but let's say a lawyer makes a public comment in writing or verbally, law such and such says this, and this is what happened, and this is a consequence. That we don't, like we do often, attack the messenger and quickly ignore the message, irrespective of the agenda behind the message, the impetus for the message, the very obvious, deliberate sort of, attempt to make sure this message comes out because we want to make sure this person looks good or bad. So are we for somehow now unwilling to critique and to question things because it was said by, not picking on him, the governor, the premier, the chief medical officer, or the chief, I can't use other jurisdictions, places.
Well, I don't know that to be the case. I don't know that. I don't know that we have properly or fully developed our capacity for public discourse. We have a great facility for talking across the fence kind of thing, for the Mall Road discussion, as they say. And that has many aspects of effectiveness. What what it doesn't do as well, I believe, is change the way in which public leadership acts. The skill and the tools, the institutional supports, etc., for being engaged in public discourse and being engaged in a way that can effectively impact on public discourse so that public actions are changed as a result. That is a development that has been, I would say, it has been neglected here. And I say neglected because I can say personally that in my former life as a civil servant, I put it to politicians from all parts of the spectrum, ministers that I serve with in particular, that there is an obligation on the part of public leadership to facilitate public discourse, to not just have the occasional public meeting and go through the motions like that, but to find ways and means of better developing a better skill set in the population and better resources, making better resources available to the population to become part of a public discussion on things and to be better informed and so on. We ought to have institutions here, and I have said it over and over again, institutions that sit between the public leadership and the average person, and that represent the views of the average person, ask questions of public leadership and deliver those answers to the average person and get instructions from them about what do you want me to ask next? Where do you want me to go with this? Should I research in order to inform you better? What's happening in the schools, what's happening in health, what's happening in finance, whatever the case may be. There's really no reason why we should not do a better job. There's an initiative recently to make Wi-Fi public hotspots or whatever more widely available. I would say we're way behind the curve. They were doing this in Singapore a decade ago, and they were doing it on a massive scale to ensure that, and they were particularly targeting the elderly population because the younger people were snapping up connectivity all over the place. But the elderly population was being left behind. They say, well, we're going to make sure that there are facilities available for everyone above age 50 to have access. And that's a sort of commitment that can impact. But it is only part of a whole sort of infrastructure
That's
that
the word.
exists.
Social, economic, political.
Yeah.
Mr. Debert, respectfully, let's take a caller. And apologies, Ms. Susan, reference to the caller was available for a bit. No,
Okay.
that's on me. That's on me. To the caller, sincere apologies for having you hang on, but thank you for your resolve and patience. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon again.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Delbert.
Welcome back, sir. Welcome back.
You hadn't quite finished what I was saying before. I understand a lot of what you're saying there, but bear in mind that a lot of our personal opinions would come into play at a time like with the pandemic and being locked down and so forth. I'm a realist. And I have to admit, maybe ashamedly so, listening to what you're saying, that I haven't changed anyway what I thought before or what I think after the lockdown. I'm very grateful to our premier and the government for their reactions to the pandemic. And my way of it is this too will pass. But then to the people in the front lines, right down to the little people cleaning and the garbage and everyone, my admiration, as I said with Mr. Churchill. One of the things that I wanted to say with Mr. Churchill, and it happened with others at the time, General Lee, General Grant, in the Civil War in the United States, and other generals over the time, the Korean War, with the Vietnam War, and so forth. The right man at the right time. What I'm very, very disappointed in over the years, and I've said it many times, is our failure to teach our children the importance of the Second World War, because it changed the history and the world forever. We have to realize Mr. Churchill was the right man at the right time, and that's what happens in history over and over. There are important moments in history where the right man has to be in place. We saw it in the biblical days, where many of God's chosen leaders had to be involved in killing people and so forth. We don't need to go into all that. But we know we're taught, and we all grew up in a Christian conservative way. The result, if the other person had continued to be Prime Minister of Great Britain, would have been absolutely disastrous for this world, for the whole world, the free world. So we have to think of those things and put aside and weigh and balance Mr. Churchill's bad things and his good things. At the time, he was the right person. A lot of people have mistakenly, over the many years, said, well, he was a great statesman. He was nothing of the kind. He was a warlord. He was there at the right moment, and the decisions he made, I wish they would make it mandatory. That meeting in March, I think, of 1940, where he made a lot of statements, but when he said victory, there will be no other acceptance of anything else. It must be victory. No amnesty. Nothing else but victory. And he made that statement to show them that there was no possibility of dealing, as Ronald Reagan has said. You cannot deal with terrorists. You have to fight them at all times. And that's what happened with the great tyrant Adolf Hitler. And then, of course, it came out of the Russians and all. But we don't need to go into that. People should be taught those things. This was what I was talking about, Mr. Churchill. The right man at the right time. We saw it with General Colin Powell. It would be good of people to read his biography. He didn't say my Black American journey or my African American journey. He said my American journey. And in it he says he is thankful that his parents went to the United States. Of course, we all know who he became, the most powerful military figure in the most powerful, wealthiest nation that has ever existed on this planet. So that is some achievement. And he said that if my parents had gone to Great Britain, like many of my father's friends did, the furthest I might have reached would be a master sergeant. Think about that. There were 5 black 4-star generals in the United States in the 1990s. Have you ever heard of a black general in the United Kingdom? We're not disparaging our relationship, and we may continue to be a colony, as we know. But I'm just trying to show you the reality of things, the reality. And that's what Mr. Churchill and others had to be realists. I have to do this to save the people, because they're not able to realize and think what will be the outcome if we don't do certain things. And that was it, what I said about this thing about courage and even lying to the people. It has been done by politicians and leaders from time to time. One of the things, and I will say this, and I know I'll get a lot of flack for this, I think the United Nations is a totally useless organization. I've thought that for the last 30 years or more than that, 40 years. And as I agree with President Reagan when he said the United States should get out of it. It has only cost lives, and American lives, and a lot of money. A lot of money, because they have failed in many, many ways. And this is the thing. People don't want to see these things. They don't want to focus on that. And they want to skip these things about. That's why I say I'm a realist. I'm a realist.
Yes, sir.
That's my main contribution when I talk about Mr. Churchill. His awful things he did, But the good things on what he did, the man of the moment, to try to help to save the world with his great friend, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And that was it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for taking my call again, sir.
Thank you very much. And this is why I love radio and why I am encouraged by that particular caller, because he puts his perspective. Well, Mr. Dilbert, we're going to pause, take a short break. When we come back, in luck, Miss Susan will stay right there. No, that's kidding. She's going to be there. Don't worry about that. We're going to take your calls and we'll continue our discussion. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Green Turtle. Modern solutions to get you through the new normal. Download the Green Turtle app now and top up yours or a loved one's phone with any mobile carrier in any destination. Home delivery of laptops, tablets, phones, accessories, and iTunes and major online retailer gift cards. And now, home deliveries of groceries and courier service. Guaranteed delivery within 2 hours from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Visit their list of products at greenturtle.ky or download the Green Turtle app today. Green Turtle is not only the future of mobile, but today it can help save a life. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app, the future of mobile, saving lives today.
Attention parents and guardians. The upcoming school year will begin on August 26. Registrations are ongoing. Any child who's 5 years old by August 31st must be enrolled in an approved educational program, including government, private, or homeschooling. Detailed student registration guidelines and forms are available at the Department of Education Services website at schools.edu.ky or by emailing edu.registration@gov.ky.
You can also visit our Facebook page at Education Cayman.
Honey, our fridge has stopped working again. Everything in the freezer is melting. We need to get this repaired right away. I'm calling Brand Source Service.
When you need the very best appliance service, call Brand Source Service at 623-5000. Offering service and installation of all brands and models of appliances. Brand Source Service is Cayman's source for appliance parts and repairs with qualified and experienced technicians and the island's largest stock of appliance parts. Brand Source Service will have your repair completed in a flash. So, whatever the problem is, call the experts at 623-5000. Brand Source Service, Dorsey Drive, Industrial Park. Telephone 623-5000.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go. Good and cleaner.
A reminder of the standard 10% off prepay on wedding dresses and gowns, also household items, drapes, bedspreads, area rugs, and more. 10% prepaid discount can also apply to all wearing apparel, $17 and up. These discounts at all our stores. Savannah Countryside, 946-1884. Elgin Avenue, 949-2452. 337 Eastern Avenue, drive-through rain or shine, 949-7104. Call our seamstress, Miss Kathy, at 949-2452. Elgin Avenue for all your adjustments and repairs. Puritan Cleaners. You feel good when you look good. Your Radio Cayman 7 a.m. news, brought to you by Cayman National, proudly serving the Cayman Islands since 1974. Visit www.caymannational.com for up-to-date information for all your financial needs and follow us on social media.
As the community continues to take precautions from COVID-19, it is important to stay prepared for other disasters now that we're in the hurricane season. Here are some post-hurricane safety tips from the Department of Environmental Health. Did you know that you must discard fresh fruits and vegetables, meats, foods in canisters, dented, leaking, or rusting cans after they have come in contact with floodwater? For full guidance on post-hurricane safety tips, visit www.deh.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
And good afternoon, welcome back. Thank you very, very much for joining us, for listening, for sharing. And as you perhaps, look out the window and think about what the weekend is going to look like, and you're concerned that it may rain or not rain, what have you, think deeply, think lovingly, and think of how we can do more to make it better for all of us, not just ourselves. With that, I am very, very grateful to my good friend Mr. Leonard Dilbert for allowing me, just through this few minutes, passing moments with your company, to be reminded how important it is for us to, what my mother always talked about, share and share, like be loving and kind one to another. It is so much that we can get by giving. So thanks for sharing your gifting with us. I'm honored.
My only thank you. Thank you. Always good to be here and to have an opportunity to speak. I wanted to kind of close out my time here by reading a couple of things that came to me, I guess you could say, during the sort of lockdown period and subsequently being encouraged to kind of go inwards even more than usual. Well, inward, that whole sort of back and forth that takes place when you start to reflect, and then you observe, and then you reflect and you observe. Before the break, I was speaking about watching the birds, and I have a particular fondness for the bird we call a big dove, and it has to do with the nature, the call of the big dove. In particular, two features that really strike me. That call is haunting, and anytime I hear it, it always grabs my attention, and the appearance of the bird in one specific detail. There is a little blue ring around the eye of the big dove that I find to be something that catches my attention physically every time I see the bird close up. So I looked up the big dove, and apparently its scientific name is Zenaida asiatica.
Zenaida asiatica?
Zenaida.
Not big dove loves amongst us. Okay, see, that's what I thought it was.
Apart or not.
Okay.
And according to birdwatchersdigest.com, its call resembles the barred or spotted owl's call, which they represent in words, which is the way that bird experts tend to do. They try to find words that sound like the call of the bird they're talking about. Who cooks for you is what they say it sounds like. I'm not sure that I buy that, and the other part that I was interested in is that they say the eyes of the big dove feature bright orange-red irises accented by a distinct featherless blue orbital ring. And it is that blue orbital ring that I'm particularly fond of. So I was moved to produce this particular piece. And let's call it, for the time being, Big Dove Watch. And it's a question of who's watching who, to some extent. I'm being watched by 12 pairs of the sharpest cerulean ringed eyes. 12 winged spies, singers all. If you took their complaint to heart, you'd weep. So I don't. I read between the notes if I have to. And there's naught about bug nor seed. Pure soul speech concerning the reach of their wings when they fling into flight. I compare that singing with where pure wonder might end. Pure wingless wonder.
Man, God has gifted you, man, and I'm glad that you share with us.
Just for, in terms of in the interest of a glossary, that word cerulean, there is a specific shade of blue that I think is among the most beautiful colors in the world, and in my estimation, that's the color around the eye of the big dove. It's a cerulean blue.
Can you imagine, the olive skinned lady with her cerulean eyes, and she gazes upon you Sorry, I seen him in.
You go there.
Well,
I'm not saying I'm going to follow you.
Hey, listen, sometimes I can lead you. Anyway,
I'm sure you can.
I want to invite you to share more with us, but Miss Susan's invited a caller to join us as we engage with our listeners. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for sharing. Hey, good afternoon. Buenas tardes, señor. ¿Qué tal, amigo?
Hello?
Sí.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Some people just got to speak to it on Westpese, you know.
Yeah. You got to speak West. You got to speak Westphailian.
How are you, sir? How are you?
I'm good, my friend. I'm calling because I heard that he was discussing poetry and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a half poet, but I like doing religious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted Leonard to hear something that I did that very, very simple but beautiful, and it's called. The title of it is "Help Us, Lord, to Love Thee More," because I'm giving God my heart, and I'm living for Him now. So, but here's how it goes. When we come before Thee, Lord, to pray, and then the next line, just kind of go down the whole thing, and I'm thinking. You could do it in church and the whole congregation would get that second line, but this is how it goes. When we come before Thee, Lord, to pray, help us to love Thee more. We ask for Your guidance, Lord, each day. Help us to love You more. Teach us Thy ways, O Lord, that we help us to love Thee more. We'll always be closer drawn to Thee. Help us to love Thee more. We have no real strength to work on our own. Help us to love Thee more. But with Your help, it's completed soon. Help us to love Thee more. We need Your strength and words of love. Help us to love Thee more. We need You, yes, we need You now. Help us to love Thee more. We thank You, Father, for Your gift of grace. Help us to love You more. That directs our path as we run this race. Help us to love Thee more. This race on earth that we must win. Help us to love Thee more against old Satan and his world of sin. Help us to love Thee more. Teach us, O Lord, to do Thy will. Help us to love Thee more. And give us the strength we need until. Help us to love Thee more. The day when You'll come to take us home, help us to love You more, where we'll celebrate around God's throne, because we have loved Thee more. What do you think?
It's the leading of the Spirit, man, and I'm glad that you were able to not only heed, but willing to record. And it is a challenging time in our history, our personal growth. So
We need Him now, so...
Yep.
Yeah, but that's what I just wanted you to hear. By the way, remember I told you the fifth something was going to happen?
Yep, it's unfolding, no?
Yeah, you saw it?
No, it's still coming.
Huh?
It's still coming. It hasn't started yet.
No, but I'm saying with that announcement.
And I'm telling you, it's not coming yet. That's just the beginning.
Yeah,
man. Listen. Let me not be disrespectful by asking you to leave us there. There's so much more we can. Mr. Debert has with us until just 2, and then we got another thing to do after that. Can we take the caller at the break, Miss Susan? Can we go to the caller? You believe that I'm in charge? Not in the studio, not at home, Bopo. Sir, respectfully, leave us there to the caller in the queue. We'll join you right after this break.
Register now for the 3rd Annual Chamber of Commerce Economic Forum, taking place online on Friday, August 14th. This year's theme, Rebuilding a Better Cayman, will tackle the effects the COVID-19 pandemic has had on the local and regional economy and how the private and public sectors can work together to create a more durable and more sustainable future. Don't miss out. Visit caymanchamber.ky to register for a full day or half day today. Corporate ticket bundles available. In partnership with the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development. The forum is made possible thanks to sponsors CUC, DART, Kensington Management Group, Cayman Enterprise City, and Hurley's Media.
Know the signs of a faulty septic system. Sinks and/or toilets that drain slowly, floor drains that overflow, or sewage that is visible outside your home are all signs that your on-site wastewater treatment system is not working properly. If your septic system is faulty, now is the time to fix it to prevent further damage in the event of a storm. For more useful hurricane preparedness tips, visit the Water Authority's website at www.waterauthority.ky or follow us on social media.
Important announcement for Caymanian tourism sector employees. The Ministry of Tourism's Displaced Tourism Employees Stipend has reopened for new registrants only until August 7. Caymanian tourism sector employees who have not yet applied for stipend program and are no longer employed are encouraged to apply via the online portal stipend.ourcayman.ky by August 7th. For more information, email stipend@caymanislands.ky.
The Wharf is your only waterfront breakfast and lunch atmosphere along the shoreline. Starts at 7 a.m. with freshly squeezed juices, hot coffee, and your farm fresh eggs.
The unique sunset happy hour and dinner ambience is your obvious choice for your waterfront dining. See you soon for salsa and boogie nights at the Wharf.
Follow us on Facebook to keep in the loop of all the happenings and come and join us at the all-day waterfront experience on the 7 Mile Beach.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. And we have the excellent company of Mr. Leonard Dilbert. He's going to join us up until the headline news at 2. So we'll invite a caller to join us again as we continue our discussion. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hi, good afternoon, Devine. How are you?
Blessed and very thankful. You know, I endeavor to say that I am gracious, hopefully, but very grateful indeed.
Good afternoon.
You are in a fabulous condition.
Amen. I tell you, man, imagine. I even put some of my hair sometimes.
Let's carry it too far, no, but anyway. Good afternoon, Mr. Dilbert. How are you?
Good afternoon. I am well. How are you?
I am as well as Dwayne. Yeah.
You're really good then.
Amen.
I just got a little bit more hair, but anyway. Mr. Dilbert, I'm going to ask Dwayne to share my contact information with you. Right?
Okay.
I would like to partner on a project that I had conceived some time ago, which included poetry and literature, because I eventually learned about how beneficial journaling is to the human's existence.
Yes.
And then because of all that has been shared with me by other persons who have journaled and who write poetry, and poetry is now their way of expressing, even if they don't share it with other people.
Yes.
I mean, if they never publish it, that's okay. They have turned their negative experience and their positive experience and their everyday experiences into poetry. What I heard you read out just now about being watched by 6 big doves was just so soothing. So calm, so real, but it so drawed me into that moment, you know?
Well, that's wonderful.
And if I can ask you to read it again before you leave from the show.
Okay.
All right.
That's part of the question of how much time they allow me here. But yeah, because I was going in a little different direction immediately. I have another piece I wanted to read, and we'll see how you respond to that one.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks very much.
I thank you, and I'll be listening into that one.
Okay.
And I will share your information. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Blessings.
Thank you.
Blessings. Mr. Dilbert, I tell you, a 6'2" stature of a lady with incredible resolve and humility. So, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am, what the English people say, I'm chuffed. It's always pleasing to hear persons with an interest and whether they're attempting the reading of poetry themselves or they're responding as a interested listener, it's kind of validation for what you do, and more of it needs to happen. That's what I can say.
Yeah.
Because I think it's essentially good for the soul in many ways. But let me just read without any further ado another piece called Crab Crawl, and I say without any further ado because once I am in that particular zone, then the argumentation that I was involved in earlier about history and all sort of thing has to fold into this because I'm finished with that now. So, yes, Crab Crawl. I had a key once, an understanding. What crab hole could it have fallen in? Which breed of red shanks might know? Or could it be the black crab? No doubt I'm to look for she or he who once danced with the cat. Could you believe it? People I find could tell about iron shore crabs and sea crabs and cliff crab versus swamp crab versus highland crab and grass peas crab. But this is a night you cannot coax not one crab out of his or her hole. You could sing any song you want about the key, what it could get open. Sing so long as you want. They ain't hearing you, ain't moving. Shine your flashlight, your fifi. They're in too deep. All you hear is a frothing that's crab speak for getting aggravated. Then black crab, quoting Frantz Fanon. Didn't I tell you? I told you he'd soon ask. Am I too not one of the beautiful people who do, who say, who make beautiful things? Does my life not also matter?
Oh, wow.
See, in some ways, that's the way I would respond to the implication in something that was being said earlier that was almost like a suggestion that I'll be lumped in with the Black Lives Matter movement or whatever. Yeah. I don't join easily.
Labels.
Yeah, I don't join easily. So I resist being labeled as this or that or the next thing. If you were to label me as being a fighter for justice, if you were to label me as being someone who believes in love as what should rule humankind, then I'll accept that.
Right.
But to say you belong to this or you along with this one or you support this or whatever, then be very careful with that because
too many people won't be put in a box.
Yes.
What's that country song? Don't fence me in. In your reference to all the crabs, though, the one I didn't hear, the sheen face crab. I don't just.
But that's the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, sheen face. So far inside the flash, they can't see him. Which is the thing has always fascinated me. Like, has anybody actually analysed what a crab hole actually looks like?
Yeah.
Like, a cross section. Does it go like this, like that? Does it
who's
twist
brave
and
enough
turn?
to put their hand to their shoulder in it?
Yeah. Will your shoulder get as far in as a crab is? Or do
they come out?
Let's keep digging.
Wait, so that's why I as the caller, just prior, very, very evidently observe your poetry, your writings, your recordings, make us not just be pensive and reflective, but it's going to do something for us to look. Everything you said, I say this to Caymanians of historical record and ancestral linkage. There's not a single one of us that can relate to what you said. Right? Others can as well. I'm not talking to them. They don't.
But I hope that is the case. I mean, I hope that whatever communication is successful there, that it's not parochial, if you will.
Yes.
That it's not insular. That it's not just about the perspective from this little island space, because it's the English language. Whether a speaker of standard English would like some of what's in there or not, the way it's spoken or the way it's written, that's neither here nor there as far as I'm concerned, because the English language is the most polyglot language known to man, I believe. Right? The most mixed up, borrow from, steal from, take away. And it's a great strength in many ways, because it potentially allows for many voices.
Sometimes I wonder if that sort of distillation doesn't contribute sometimes to this being weak. The one word love, for instance, that you referenced. But as you shared, I was thinking that, you used the word eat. And in my mind, I heard, nah, that I have no bobo, and it's interesting. And I want to publish it.
And that's a whole discussion. That's a whole discussion about those choices. And I've done workshops, poetry workshops on a couple of occasions, and leading them. I mean, I've done as a student as well, but I've led workshops on a number of occasions, and one of the things I always try to tell people who are interested in writing poetry and the craft of poetry, that every word has to carry its own weight. Every word has a stand, has a place, has to prove itself. Otherwise, you have to ask yourself, well, what's that doing there? Because words can be illuminating or misleading, depending on how you use them and where they're placed.
I promised myself that when I invited you, that I would not get lost and be neglectful, as I often do. When Susan says to me, "Listen, boy, take them breaks, I got time to switch for you." Today, she hasn't had to threaten publicly, nor verbally. But if it's not a great imposition, would you delve into your very busy schedule? And we will be most gracious to publicly invite you to join us again on any continuing discussion.
I'm glad you're repeating that, because I'm remembering it. I was about to say to you before I take my leave, I will thank you for the invitation to come back, because I look forward to coming back and speaking to a couple of things that I have been working on. Or have been working on me, as the case may be, because I kid you not. It is the case. You have to accept in doing this, in engaging in this practice, that you are a vehicle. If you attempt to impose your will, you have to make choices. You have to be mindful of what you're doing, thoughtful about what you're doing. But the minute you attempt to exert control, then you discover very quickly that it evaporates. The control is not in your hands ultimately. Right? It's a given thing. You either can be led into where the language is taking you, and what insight you may be able to gain from that or share from that, because it's a matter of coming through you to the audience.
So let yourself be the pen to allow the ink to be recorded. My friend, thanks very much. And
I am 1 minute over time, but I'm mindful of the request from your caller. Should I read this again, or should I not punish the rest of the listeners? No, we're out of time.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, okay. She was going to invite us, but we had to call about the other guests.
Yes.
Okay. We go into the news. We'll talk again soon.
Okay.
All right.
We'll talk again.
Blessings. Please stay tuned.
Thank you.
Your 2 p.m. headlines brought to you by greenturtle.ky. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app, the future of mobile, saving lives today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have, on the island.
Generations present. Your voice, your choice.
It is in the best interest of the people of these islands.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. This Saturday, a group of 5 senior athletes from Stingray Swim Club will attempt to swim across the North Sound in honor of Emmanuel Manny Brown. Brown died tragically in a boating accident 1 year ago on August 11th. The swim is planned to start at Starfish Point and end at Georgetown Yacht Club on Saturday, August 8th, to start at 6 a.m. and finish at 8 to 8:30 a.m. In international news, the U.S. Treasury has imposed sanctions on Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam and 10 other top officials from Hong Kong and mainland China. The sanctions were used to target those undermining Hong Kong's autonomy, said Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. The move comes weeks after China imposed a controversial national security law on Hong Kong, which critics say threatened its freedoms. Action is needed as Africa's coronavirus cases pass the 1 million mark, according to the African Union body dealing with the pandemic. It says South Africa, where testing has been widespread, accounts for more than half of all cases. Experts say a lack of comprehensive testing across Africa means the true extent of the pandemic is not known. TikTok is threatening legal action against the U.S. after Donald Trump ordered firms to stop doing business with the Chinese app within 45 days. The company said it was shocked by an executive order from the U.S. president outlining the ban. TikTok said it would pursue all remedies available to ensure the rule of law is not discarded. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
Green Turtle, modern solutions to get you through the new normal. Download the Green Turtle app now and top up yours or a loved one's phone with any mobile carrier in any destination. Home delivery of laptops, tablets, phones, accessories, and iTunes and major online retailer gift cards. And now, home deliveries of groceries and courier service. Guaranteed delivery within 2 hours from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Visit their list of products at greenturtle.ky or download the Green Turtle app today. Green Turtle is not only the future of mobile, but today it can help save a life. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app. The future of mobile, saving lives today.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Your voice, your choice, your radio.
While the primary source of alcohol for underage drinkers is people they know, research shows that 7 to 9% of those who report alcohol use in the Cayman Islands purchase alcohol directly from retailers. Tips Off Premise helps retailers focus on verifying the legal drinking age when selling alcohol. Since the program was introduced here in the Cayman Islands back in 2005, we have trained over 400 persons and partnered with over 10 retailers. Contact us on 949-9000 to have your staff trained today. This message is brought to you by Radio Cayman and the National Drug Council.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you very, very much for joining us this fantastic Friday afternoon. And, if you'd allow me, I want to say thanks to those who called in and shared their thoughts. If I may, just through my own sort of interpretation and impression. The excellent company, for me personally, but I believe referencing the comments from our callers, for public, for the presence of Mr. Leonard Dilbert, through his poetry, through his commentary, share with us. Maybe it'll encourage more of us to step out, to be invited to think, as the caller before the break reminded us. More of us are taking to writing down our thoughts. Maybe it's a creative process because we want to write a novel. Maybe we just want to record something. We have no intention for it ever to be published nor shared. But it's good. It's not just therapeutic. That's just something that we may want to recall. If you can take an example from someone else, maybe someone here in the country that you know, maybe someone that did something years ago or centuries ago, that is a good thing, and you can use it in our own lives. Let's say that if we can use it in our own lives to improve ourselves, our positive contributions to our societies, hey, that's going to be a great thing. Now, don't want to say that we're going to bury our heads in the sand and pretend that wrong is right and bad is good. We are probably mindful that the scripture talk about in the last days that we're going to call right wrong and wrong right and this and that and the next thing. But, we got to look at what we're doing, whether we should be doing it, or should we be doing it then? Should we do it, differently? Is there a better way? Should we have someone join us in doing this thing? And is this the right time, to do it? Let's find ways to make it better. And doesn't mean that we disagree on something that we have to necessarily be divisive, nor vitriolic, nor disrespectful. But acquiescence sometimes. Anyway, let's go to the phones. What do we have on the table, Miss Susan? Whisper gently in my ear as we know what we're going to share with our listeners. We're honored to continue our partnership with the Health Services Authority and to be able to invite our people to understand the importance of, that, as I think Mr. Dilbert alluded to, the notion that what we've experienced here and globally has allowed us to look at our institutions, our systems of governance, of education, of healthcare. Well, as we celebrate, the importance of breastfeeding, let's join the phones. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
How are you today?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you again for taking time out. Thanks so much to Ms. Spence for always being at the other end to help us to facilitate the wonderful discussions that we have in our partnership with the Health Services Authority. Could I ask of you, only because we're sort of still transitioning from having our guests seated with us and doing it remotely, that allows the flexibility and the convenience, would you mind giving us, Ms. Monica sent through the information and stuff, just to our listeners, a brief introduction of yourself? Would that be fine?
That'd be cool.
Okay, I like the sound. Please go right ahead.
Okay, my name is Fidela Facey-Gooding. I'm a nurse midwife at the Health Services Authority. I work on the maternity unit, and I've been working in the Cayman Islands for the past 12 years. Okay,
so I was on fire then when you started. Okay, that's good. She's like, boy. No, and thank you, and that's going, because when we look at the whole idea that not just now in the sense of what we may be feeling personally, or what we may have experienced, in terms of the anxiety or the trepidation. As we look at breastfeeding, I quickly recall the many conversations with your colleagues about the many wonderful benefits of breastfeeding. The mother has, the readily available supply of the best, sustenance for the newborn, for the nursing child. Then and there, without having to worry about getting that thing from the supermarket that may or may not be available. So now, just the convenience, but also the importance of it. So share with us as we look at the whole idea of breastfeeding. We want to take guidance from you and allow us, through you, to be led into the discussion. So breastfeeding, is it something that has once again finding favor with societies?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question.
Sorry, yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm asking from the perspective that, again, just my personal perspective, that it would appear at some point in time in our recent memory, we didn't look at breastfeeding as that thing that was so important that our parents and grandparents and their parents, grandparents did, maybe out of necessity, but maybe because they were absolutely wise in understanding the importance of it. We in the Western world were embarrassed by it. We didn't facilitate, accommodate, nor nurture and encourage, mothers to breastfeed. We were probably embarrassed. We were probably whatever it is. And I'm wondering now, in recent times, are we now getting back to the point where we understand the wisdom of the ages and the importance of breastfeeding for everybody, mother and child? Are we getting there? You think that more of us now are starting to appreciate that this is absolutely essential?
Yeah, breastfeeding in itself is quite essential for mothers and the babies. Yes, initially in the onset, the earlier days, mothers used to breastfeed, and after that there was a drop-off in breastfeeding. Most persons were gravitating to formula, but that changed somewhat because studies have shown that breast feeding. There are over 100 benefits to breastfeeding. And breastfeeding has shown to facilitate bonding. It has shown better health for both mom and babies. As I stated earlier before, there are more than 100 reasons. And I'll just list a few. First of all, it provides immunity for the baby, especially for the first part of the breastfeeding, which is the colostrum. And that mostly lasts for about 3 days. And it is encouraged. We encourage breastfeeding. And I realize working on the maternity unit that most mothers want to exclusively breastfeed because of the benefits they have read about. They have spoken to their obstetrician, their pediatrician about it. I think one of the things why most mothers had stopped breastfeeding was because of the aesthetic of it, how their body would look, but now they're realizing that it is more important to breastfeed their infant than just to give formula.
If I could perhaps ask of you from that perspective of breastfeeding, and you've delineated that there are 100 reasons, or somehow we've managed to record them. In asking and understanding that the idea of immunity, the weight loss, the physical and psychological development, the bonding, those are some of the more obvious. Of that 100 in there, are there any that sort of, as a nurse and as a nurse within the maternity unit, that sort of surprised you? Oh, I didn't realize this, and not ranking them that this is the most important and then this is number one and this is 9 or 9. But are there some in there that even as a member of the medical profession that you thought, I didn't realize that this is one of the benefits?
Yes, yes, there are some, and studies are showing that, especially now, you didn't answer the question, but just to go with our now pandemic, that is happening, it is encouraged for mothers to breastfeed if they want, because breastfeeding is also a choice. The mothers have to want to breastfeed. It's not something that we don't coerce mothers to breastfeed. It's a choice, but we do encourage mothers to do so. But now with the onset of the COVID, we do encourage breastfeeding. There are still, WHO has done some studies that show just a minute of where, something I've read online where with WHO showed that they only have 3 persons, 3 babies, and the studies did not show that those babies were exclusively breastfed. But it is encouraged for mothers to exclusively breastfeed their babies, especially up to 6 months of life, and also up to a year or 2.
Yeah. Are there any sort of, and I'm just thinking back, one, to previous conversations that we've had publicly about trying to invite people to understand the importance of it, how essential and significant breastfeeding is for mother and child, but just the conversations as parents that we'll have with our friends who share their experiences and the positive benefits of breastfeeding. Is there any merit to saying, listen, if you're going to breastfeed, make sure you do not, if you can, everything working well, there's no reason not to, don't do it for less than at least, say, 6 months, or don't do it more than a year or 2 years or whatever. Is there anything to indicate that there's an optimum time, or there is no benefit doing it beyond this time, or if you're not going to do it for at least this time, then it don't make sense? Anything to that nature?
I have not seen any studies to support doing it for less than 6 months, but when you exclusively breastfeed, like I made mention to before, of many reasons, of the many benefits, like providing the baby with the basic nutrients, because it has all the nutrients that the baby needs. The mother herself is more comfortable. The mother will lose her pre-pregnancy weight within no time. Some mothers do exclusively breastfeed for a year, And I mean, after 6 months of breastfeeding, you do introduce foods from the family pot just to supplement their nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
It is, however, a comfort for mothers, for babies after the 6 months, but it does not provide all the nutrition that the baby needs after the 6 months. So that is why the studies have shown up to 6 months.
Up to 6 months, yeah. So at least if you're doing it for that amount of time and then exclusively, then beyond the 6 months, you start to, we think back to maybe what our mothers did or our aunts as we got older, that we saw, with our siblings or with our cousins and the like. They would take food from the pot and a little bit of cassava and mash it with the fish gravy or whatever. Just slowly, bit by bit.
Yes, just slowly introducing. Yes,
slowly, yes. And as you were saying, I was thinking back how they were so wise. They would not introduce many things at once. It was, one by one. Try them with a little bit of this, and then that seemed to be good. To agree with the child. Try them with a little bit of this. Is that something that is more than just custom and wisdom of the ages, or is that actually proven to be essential? I'm thinking of food allergies and other things.
Yes, that is one of the things. When you're introducing food, you introduce food one at a time, because in that sense, you will determine if the child is allergic to any of the food products you are getting, and then you can actually pinpoint. So yes, you don't go ahead and just start giving them rice and chicken and dumpling and cassava and all of that. First, you introduce, at least for the first, after 6 months, you introduce like one paper at a time or fruits at a time, and that way you can determine if the child is allergic to it. Some studies are showing that some mothers who definitely would have to go back to work if you want to continue breastfeeding. Breastfeeding means that the infant would get the milk, the breast milk itself, and not necessarily have to be attached to their breast. And they can express the milk and leave it in the fridge, and the caregiver or the spouse can actually use that milk and give to the baby, so the baby will continue getting those nutrients. Say mothers would have to go back to work at 3 months or 4 months. They can use that milk to give to the baby. But so I know breastfeeding, just let me stick this in there. Breastfeeding is very, very challenging. There are a lot of challenges with breastfeeding. Some mothers, I've noticed on the unit, find it difficult. Some may cry because they think that they're not getting it right. But it's the beginning of the process. But one of the things that we need to look at is that it's hard, but they have to be relaxed and be patient. You have some few ABCs. Be patient, relax, and just be aware when your baby needs what they need.
Well, we have a short break to take. That's good. And maybe when we come back, if it's okay, we want to be guided by you, but maybe remind our expectant mothers or those who are, just have their newborns and maybe, as you said, unsure if they're doing it right, or maybe they're struggling for whatever reason. Remind them of the resources that are available, the support mechanisms and systems that are in place, and we can talk more about the issue of breastfeeding and its importance. So we pause and take a quick break. When we come back, we can continue the discussion to our listeners. All right, perfect. Please stay tuned and join us after the break.
Green Turtle, modern solutions to get you through the new normal. Download the Green Turtle app now and top up yours or a loved one's phone with any mobile carrier in any destination. Home delivery of laptops, tablets, phones, accessories, and iTunes and major online retailer gift cards. And now, home deliveries of groceries and courier service. Guaranteed delivery within 2 hours from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Visit their list of products at greenturtle.ky or download the Green Turtle app today. Green Turtle is not only the future of mobile, but today it can help save a life. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app. The future of mobile, saving lives today.
Healthcare Pharmacy in Grand Harbor is now fully stocked with L'Oreal Clay Masks, L'Oreal Cell Renewal Day and Night Cream, L'Oreal Sugar Scrubs, and L'Oreal Revitalift combos. You will find the extensive L'Oreal skincare collection in aisle 1 of Healthcare Pharmacy in Grand Harbor. Remember to visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or WhatsApp 329-7313 to refill and transfer your prescriptions and collect from our Grand Harbor or Governor Square pharmacies. We care about your health at Healthcare Pharmacy.
I'm Acting Superintendent Brady Banks of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service. Speeding, drunk driving, and distracted driving are all extremely dangerous behaviors that can cause accidents and loss of lives that affect not only those involved, but their families and friends alike. We wish to remind all motorists, practice safe driving habits every time you get behind the wheel. Drive within the speed limit and don't drive if you've been drinking. Give 100% of your attention to the road when driving. Equally important to note, we are now entering into our rainy season. Historically, we tend to see increased road collisions due to weather conditions, often resulting in poor visibility and wet road conditions. Remember, extra attention is required if you're driving, as well as increased vigilance of other road users. Drive safely, Cayman Island.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you very much for joining us on another fantastic Friday afternoon. And as we continue our partnership with the Health Services Authority, very, very grateful to Nurse Gooden at the maternity ward for joining us as we talk about the benefits of breastfeeding. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule and helping us to appreciate, especially now where we may find it challenging to go out for whatever reason, that if you're a nursing mother, you have probably the best supply available to benefit you and your child. Or at least that's my understanding, right?
Okay. Then we do have a breastfeeding support group in the Cayman Islands. It's called the Cayman Islands Breastfeeding Support Group.
Mm-hmm.
We do have an email address, which is cibreastfeeding@gmail.com, and a Facebook page that you can use. We do have a list of persons on that breastfeeding support group in different districts, which they can call. These persons are mothers who had babies here. Some have the tool or equipment that they can use to rent if they need like a pump. They can get a pump to rent. They have persons who they can call. Some of these persons are lactation consultants. They can call who would assist them with breastfeeding. It's a long list with the names and the numbers on it. So if persons are interested in getting assistance, they can call the HSA, the maternity unit, and you can either fax, email, or send them this, or they can probably look on the Facebook page for the breastfeeding support group.
We have a quick comment from one of our listeners, and I thought at first I had read it incorrectly, and I thought, well, you better look at this closely. So the listener has asked if we could ask on her behalf, and I was trying to read it verbatim, but let me just quickly. She's relaying that she has now, I think, forgive me because I dropped my phone and I cracked the screen, so I think that's a 3 and not a 7. So she's been breastfeeding for either 3 or attempting to breastfeed, was the word, attempting, highlighted, for 3 or 7 months, but is having difficulty. She relays that there are some issues relative to the discomfort and the infant not necessarily grasping properly. She sort of provides some detail, but I think you follow what I'm sharing, and wanted to know if there's any advice you could offer to a sister. And she says she's had to resort to ensuring that the infant gets the formula and proper nutrition and the like. The other question that she wants to know is, how does she know that she's giving the child, enough?
Okay. Dwayne, did you say did she say 3 months or 7 months or 3 weeks?
No, months.
Just
So
have to clarify.
Yeah, it is months. What happened is, and I apologize to you, Never. I very foolishly, I was getting out of my car. I had the phone on my lap. I was fumbling with this mask and stepped out, dropped the phone on the pavement, cracked the corner of it, and so my screen is now, not the best. And so, anyway, it's either 3 or 7.
Okay.
But it's months. That's very clear.
Okay, I will answer the question based on how I interpret the question.
Yes.
All right. After 3 months of breastfeeding, you should not be having any challenges because in the early onset, those at the time you would have challenges. By 3 months, you would have been an established breastfeeder. So at 3 months, you should not be having any problems. If you do having problems, you definitely need to speak to one of the consultants or call the unit, and somebody on the unit can address them. Or even speak to their pediatrician.
Okay. So
Because at 3 months, you should not be having any issues with breastfeeding. It normally happens within the first week or two. Most times the first week.
Well, I appreciate that because I was...
And if...
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yes, and I think you asked me about some of the problems that can occur. That's what you asked.
Yeah, and also to answer the other question that this lady asked was, well, how do I know I'm giving the child enough? The child is getting enough, because... Okay.
Good question. Very good question. One other thing you can know if the child is getting enough is if the child is passing urine and passing stool. And we're talking about within the first week, if the child is getting enough breast milk, the child will definitely. You will see they're passing stool regularly. And after that, the stool will start changing, then you realize the baby is getting enough. And the baby is also gaining weight.
Mm-hmm.
In the initial onset, babies normally lose weight like the first day or day to 3 days, but after that, the babies normally gain weight. And if your baby is gaining weight, your baby is growing, baby is not floppy and very healthy, then you would know that the baby is getting enough feed.
Yeah, man. I can imagine that with some mothers in particular, especially first-time parents. We got a jar, it's measured out, we can, shovel it into the child, and we know, well, that was 4 ounces or 40 ounces. But with the milk there, did they take? So, thank you for letting us understand that. I know that you have much on your schedule as well, and I certainly appreciate it, but I don't want to rush you off. What sort of other thoughts you want to share with us as we close out our discussion this afternoon?
Just to say, I would encourage every expecting mothers to encourage. I'm encouraging them to breastfeed because it is so important. It's a happy moment. It is going to be challenging. I always tell my patients it is more challenging than labor, and some people like no. But then after they started breastfeeding, they realize it is really, really challenging because it's to get the baby to latch, to get the baby will breastfeed. For some babies breastfeed for an hour, which they should not, because sometimes babies cry for different reasons, which is another forum for that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the baby just needs to be cuddled, breastfeed for at least 20 minutes, half an hour within the first day. Some books stipulate every 3 hours, which I'm not going to dispute that, but some babies, you feed them on demand.
Mm-hmm.
If a baby, like you're sleeping, you don't wake up the baby to feed every 3 hours unless the baby is very, 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 very young.
Mm-hmm. Okay. They'll let you know when they're hungry.
It's just to enjoy, just enjoy breastfeeding. It is going to be difficult. You're going to have sore nipples within the first week. And there are remedies for that. You can use a lanolin cream. You can use your own breast milk and you put it on the breast to air dry. If your breast is bleeding, you don't breastfeed from that breast. If your breast is hard and you're having fever and it's knotty and it's red, you see your doctor, you see your obstetrician about that. Right? Because we are responsible for mothers. Their obstetricians are responsible for their mothers for the first 6 weeks after you give birth. But breastfeeding is just it's an enjoyable, it's a bonding moment between mommy and baby and father.
Well, we're glad that you're so willing, and thank you for taking time to share with us. And to, as you shared, to the mothers out there, persevere. There is the support mechanism there, and call upon it. Hey, thank you very much, Nurse Gooden. Very, very much appreciate you sharing with us a very important topic. All right.
Okay.
All right. Have an excellent weekend. And
you too, sir.
Hopefully we get a chance to have you and your colleagues in our studio again to discuss this important issue as we look at where we are and the importance of doing as much as we can for the health, safety, and well-being of our mothers and our children. All right.
Okay, I'll be delighted.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you so much again, and all the very best to you and your colleagues over there in the health profession, but in particular at the Health Services Authority. All right.
Okay.
Have a wonderful weekend. Well, thanks to all of you who listened and shared and called and joined in. And as you go about the weekend thinking, and as you talk to your friends and family, well, remember what we do affect others and ourselves. So let's make that thing as best as we can. Don't dismiss the importance of social engagement in any setting, in any sphere. Always make it safe, not only in what you say, but in the way you say it and in what you do. So all that we have, let's ensure that we are able to share in a loving, kind, meaningful, productive, positive manner. So thanks again to Miss Susan for joining us. We invite you to have an excellent weekend. Come back for the record Monday morning with Restore It. Invite you to share with us more on Talk Today come Monday afternoon. But between now and then, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Fidelity Bank. For all your banking needs, visit fidelitygroup.com. Fidelity, we're good for you.
Also brought to you by greenturtle.ky. Take a ride on the Green Turtle Express today. Download the Green Turtle app. The future of mobile, saving lives today.